Yo, what's good with you? Back in black with another Enlisted video. If you guys are new to the channel and you love shooting games just like me, make sure you aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. At least I hope so. Today we are comparing all the BR1 and BR2 submachine guns for the Japanese Army and Enlisted to see which of them is the best for you and your particular playstyle. First up, we got the S1-100, also known as the Steyr Solotherm, which is a submachine gun of Swiss-Austrian origin. This weapon was developed in the 1930s and was renowned for its high quality production and robustness, earning it the nickname the Rolls-Royce of submachine guns. Unfortunately, due to how expensive the weapon was to produce, it wasn't made in large quantities, but as far as context of the video game is concerned, a good number of these weapons were sold to Japan prior to World War II, and they designated the weapon as the Type SU SMG. I had to look up a lot of the lore because the Enlisted description wasn't really doing it much justice, basically saying it was an MP34 chambered in 7.65 parabellum, which is kinda true, but from what I actually read, this weapon was chambered in 7.63 Mauser, but I suppose I'm just nitpicking at this point, so we'll go ahead and get into the stats. As far as the damage is concerned, we're looking at a maximum of 5.9, which is second best in the entire group, and even out to 100 meters that will drop down to 2.9. Keep in mind you only need 10 points of damage to down somebody. Bullet velocity is going to be tied for first in the group, coming in at 370 meters per second, which for added context is ironically bad in the grand scheme of submachine guns in the entire game, because when you look at other nations, they usually hover around the average of at least 400 meters per second usually, but that just means you'll either want to be a bit closer to your target or you will have to do a little bit more shot leading when it comes to Japanese SMGs. Moving on, for the fire rate, we are looking at a tied for group worst 450 rounds per minute, which should make your 32 round box magazine last a pretty decent amount of time, and even if it doesn't, you'll still get a second best in the group reload speed at 2.6 seconds to make up for it. And I almost forgot to mention that this weapon comes with a bayonet for emergencies or banzai charges. Shot deviation is thankfully tied for best in the group at 70, so that'll provide one of the better cones for fully automatic fire. From a recoil perspective, we are getting a vertical stat of 25 and a horizontal stat of 10, which is third best from a vertical standpoint and tied for first from a horizontal standpoint. Very controllable, and it wouldn't hurt to invest in the vertical recoil reduction perk as well. Last notable thing I did want to mention about this weapon is that you can put it in semi-auto fire if you want, but I personally don't see a need for that since the weapon already shoots kinda slow generally speaking, and the iron sights are also quite nice in my personal opinion, arguably the best in the entire group, but I will let you guys comment down below if you agree with that statement or not. Moving on to Japan's iconic SMG, we shall now take a look at the Type 100 early variant. This SMG was the first one that was mass produced by Japan, but even then those numbers weren't necessarily that high since the Japanese army put a much higher emphasis on rifles in general. The reason the Type 100 is designated as the early model is because the first batch of Type 100s were actually fitted with a bayonet lug, which should make this weapon much more formidable in close range combat, much like the S1-100. Not only that, we are also getting a group best damage going all the way up to 6 per shot, which turns this weapon into a 2-shot down in close range engagements while still retaining that same fire rate of 450 rounds per minute. Unfortunately, the bullet velocity does go down a bit to a tied for worst in the tier or group 350 meters per second, which will cause a need for even more shot leading at medium range. We lost 2 bullets in the magazine when comparing this weapon to the S1-100, but we gained 0.2 in our reload time, bringing it all the way down to 2.4 seconds, making this gun the fastest reload in the entire group. Shot deviation is also the same as the S1 at 70, but the biggest and most important difference with the Type 100 is going to be how easy it is to control, because we have a vertical recoil stat coming in at 26 and a horizontal stat coming in at 10. And while yes, that is 1 point higher in the vertical category, we are getting an ever so rare boosted recoil control stat of 75%, which is even higher than the MP40 for Germany. Slight adjusting on the mouse or thumbstick coupled with vertical recoil control perks should make any movement on this gun while shooting basically non-existent. The iron sights aren't necessarily the best in my personal opinion, but they're not necessarily bad in any way, shape, or form either, and the rear peephole can kind of get in the way when seeing people at close range occasionally, but I would say they are generally very serviceable overall. Coming up for our third SMG of the day, we now gotta take a look at the MP28, but this time with a twist. Instead of that abysmal 20-round box magazine that it had with the German faction, we now have a 50-round box magazine with the Japanese faction, which is spectacular in my personal opinion. And this feature alone may very well negate anything negative that I may say about this weapon in general, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you about it anyways. We are losing our bayonet feature that we had with our last two competitors, and we are getting a reduced damage going all the way down to 5.5 per shot, which is indeed the lowest in the entire group. However, we do offset that by going back up to a tied for first bullet velocity, going all the way to 470 meters per second, and we get an increase to our rate of fire, making it 480 rounds per minute, which is second fastest in the entire group, which is much better at closer range than our two previous contemporaries. On the downside, again, we are getting a group worst reload speed going down to 3.6 seconds, so I highly recommend reloading before your entire mag is empty to cut that down a smidge. The shot deviation goes up to a group worst 84, so that just further encourages you to get closer to your enemy to enjoy that fully automatic fire with your 50-round magazine, lest you end up missing with a good portion of your magazine whenever you try to engage foes at medium range. That said, highly recommend shooting in bursts with this weapon if you do try to engage somebody that's not in your face. As far as the recoil is concerned, we are getting a vertical recoil stack coming in at 21 and a horizontal recoil stack coming in at 11, which is worst from a horizontal perspective, but that shouldn't really matter that much since 11 is still a really good number. Vertically, that is second best in the entire group, and I didn't even mention that we retain our higher than average recoil control stat coming in at 70% with the MP28 in particular. So adjustments with your thumbstick or your mouse should be a breeze to make. Regarding the enlisted description for this weapon, you'll see them mention that this SMG is quite heavy and it doesn't really seem to have any negative impact on your movement speed. Rather, the weight of the gun will actually nerf your aiming speed, which is visually noticeable, but it is a very slight feeling. And I'm not even trying to imply that this weapon should get like a nerf or anything like that. But despite what the description says, the aim speed being slower than usual has almost no effect on my gameplay in any way, shape, or form. And that being said, this weapon is still a monster when you hit fire as well. So that being said, maybe they could stand to kind of push it further into a niche, making it better when you hit fire and worse when you aim, or at least make the aim slightly slower, because again, it doesn't really impact me in any way, shape, or form. Let me know if you guys agree with that take down below. Coming up for our last SMG of the day, trying to make a good first impression on you, is the Type 2A SMG, which was an experimental SMG made by Japan in the mid-1930s, improving on the Type 1 SMG's design, which is a premium squad weapon from when the Pacific campaign first came out. So I know a lot of you won't be too familiar with that weapon, but we are, as the game describes it, seeing improvements in the areas consisting of fire rate, aim down sight speed, reloading speed, general accuracy, and recoil control, which is a hefty amount of improvements. So taking a look at the stats for ourselves, the damage does go down to 5.6 in comparison to the rest of the group that we talked about earlier, and that is a little bit odd to me considering that it uses the same bullet as the Type 100, but whatever. Making another comparison, although it is weaker than the S1-100 at close range, it's actually stronger at a distance, maintaining its damage of 3.2 per shot. while the S100 on the other hand drops down to 2.9 out to 100 meters. So the Type 2A definitely carries its range better while also shooting faster at a best in group 600 rounds per minute. Much like the Type 100, the bullet velocity goes back down to 350 meters per second. So even with the better range, you will have to do a little bit more shot leading with your bullets. Reload speed is tied for second best at 2.6 seconds, and you will definitely need the extra reload speed when you're going back down to a base magazine size of 30 from a previous mag size of 50 with the MP28. The shot deviation sits right in the middle of the group at 75, which is kinda on the high side, but I suppose it is okay because one thing this weapon description definitely got right was talking about the improved recoil control coming in at a vertical stat of 10 and a horizontal stat of 10 as well, which is the best combination that I have seen in the game thus far from any SMG. And I suppose trying to keep it in line, they did drop the recoil control stat down to a base of 60, which is normal for SMGs across the board. To make it even more unique in comparison to its contemporaries, we do have a fire selection mode consisting of auto, semi-auto, and we even get auto slow. But if I am being completely honest, considering how non-existent the recoil is for this gun, I am not necessarily too sure why you would want to purposely nerf your fire rate on your SMG, especially when you have the highest one in the tier, but whatever, I suppose it is an option. Looking at all four of these SMGs, this was turning out to be one of my harder groups for me to rank best or worst because you can't necessarily go wrong with any of them per se, but taking my best stab at it, the S1-100 or the Steyr Solotherm has great damage and I think it has the best iron sights in the group as well, but unfortunately a lot of the standout features for this weapon can be found on other guns in the group, and the iron sights aren't necessarily that important on SMG unless they are just abysmally bad, like the Owen Mark 1 for example. So again, those things aren't necessarily that important when you're fighting at close range. It is more important as you try to stretch the gun out further than it's supposed to be used and intended to be used. But again, for that reason, I feel like that one kind of just ended up coming in last, if I'm being completely honest. Coming in for third place, this one might surprise a lot of you, but this is one of those rare instances where fire rate is not necessarily going to win the day by itself as a stat for a SMG. And the one thing about the Type 2A SMG is that yes, it does shoot fast and that is good, but like it doesn't shoot so fast that it's the best close quarters weapon, nor is it the default recommendation for any other type of standout feature besides recoil, which isn't really that bad on any of the SMGs that we talked about today. But if you do really suck at controlling your recoil, then I can see why you would have this higher than third place. But for me, it actually performs better at medium close range because you end up reloading very often with this guy due to the same standard size magazine and with the increased fire rate and the lower damage. And I guess also when it comes to clearing out squads and trenches and buildings, I can name two guns that might serve you better. And the first one is going to be our second place winner, which is going to be the Type 100 early. And although it doesn't shoot as fast as the Type 2A, it makes up for it by having the ability to two-shot down people at close range, and it also has a bayonet, unlike the other two later BR2 SMGs that we talked about today. And not only that, I would also argue that this weapon performs better than the Type 2A at medium range as well, if they're not right on par. And since they have the same iron sights more or less, I figured the second place placement for the Type 100 would be more appropriate. And of course, my first place winner is going to be the MP28 for a few reasons. Versatility is always nice as an assaulter, but when it comes to clearing objectives and shredding down squads at close range, that's the main thing you want to focus on. And I believe the MP28 does the best job of allowing you to do that, especially coming with that 50 round magazine. And I guess generally speaking, not only that, it still performs pretty good out the medium range as well, especially when you master the recoil control, which should be easy with that 70% stat. And again, all that being said, I feel like the weapon that gives you the most bullets gives you the most opportunity to kill everybody that's in front of you, and that, again, that is the best thing you want to focus on when you're playing as an assaulter. So for that reason, I feel like the MP28 is my first place winner. But I do want to know what you guys think, because at the end of the day, these are just my personal opinions. But hopefully with the combination of the gameplay, my explanations, and your own personal preferences, you can help decide for yourself which is the best submachine gun for you to spend your silver on over and over, and which weapon you want to spend your silver on upgrading over and over again for all of your soldiers. But neither here nor there, I do appreciate you guys for watching. If you found anything I said insightful or useful, or maybe you just enjoyed the gameplay, don't forget to aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. At least I hope so. Oh, and if you know anybody who just recently started playing Enlisted, don't forget to tell them that, I guess show them this video as well. I'm sure they will appreciate it and find it very useful. But yeah, other than that, hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Black Guy out.